All right, everybody. This next presentation, on and off field success can be a complicated puzzle, but this coach has developed some great methods to find sustained success. Michael Corsetto has been spending over a decade developing citrus circuits to be a powerhouse year after year, and I'm excited for him to tell you all about some of the secrets on how that they make that happen. Please help me in welcoming Mike Corsetto.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me here. A really tough act to follow. Oh my gosh, Juliana's presentation was amazing. I think every team should have a student. I don't even remember your title. It was amazing. A lot of what you're going to hear today is a less polished version of what Juliana shared an hour ago, so I apologize in advance, but I hope that we can all continue to use this as encouragement of how we can build our teams. But let's talk about staying on in the off season. First, a bit of an introduction. Like Dave said, I'm Citrus Circuit's head coach. I'm a co-founder of an engineering consulting firm that we just spun up about 4 months ago. I've been doing FIRST for 20 plus years. I was an FLL alum back in 2001, 2002. I was a student on the FIRST Robotics team, and then I started coaching Citrus Circuits when I went to college at UC Davis. Is there a way we can make these slides bigger so I don't have to look at the screen a bunch? Yes. Yeah. How do I do that? Sorry, guys.
That's my mouse. There we go.
Lovely. Thank you. Couple of other things that are important about me. This is my family. My dad is in the back with my mom. My dad is the head coach of another robotics team. I did reverse coach inspiration. So I started coaching Citrus Circuits. And I said, Dad, you got to start doing this robot stuff. And so he started a team about 5 years ago in the Bay Area. And then my sister on the left just had a kid 7 days ago. So I'm a fresh uncle, and I'm going to meet my new niece in just a couple days. So. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about what we're going to discuss today. Topics around the off season. We're going to go over 5, I think, key things to talk about. And in each one of these, we'll talk about some of the principles around this off season topic. We'll talk about a highlight, something that Citrus Circuits does that might be new, novel, or different. And then, most importantly, in my view, we'll just talk about the simple things that like a task that you should do tomorrow if you haven't already done it, something to consider to incorporate into your team right away. And then we have some final thoughts at the end of the presentation. Okay, our first main category, staying on in the off season, putting in the work in the off season to make sure you have a successful competition season, is putting your team together, forming your team. That includes recruiting and onboarding. The recruiting process, in my view, gets easier the more your team grows. There are network effects that come into this program, and speaking from firsthand experience, I shared in my keynote presentation here last year that Citrus Circuits went from 10 to 20 kids in the back of a math classroom. Now we have 67 returning students, and we had 91 students apply to the team, and we accepted 56 of those 91 applicants. So our team is in real engine mode now, and those problems around recruiting get easier as your network effects grow. However, I think there is only so much that natural network effect can do to grow and recruit within your program. One of the areas that we were really disciplined in this year over a lot of other years on Citrus is focusing on classroom recruitment within the feeder schools in our community, specifically in things like the math classroom or the English classroom, where you know you're going to get nearly 100% student coverage. And I will say that it was inspiring during our interviews, because I interview every student that applies to the team. During our interviews this summer, hearing some of the students share that the only reason they applied to Citrus is because one of our freshmen went back to their junior high and shared in the math classroom about how cool Citrus Circuits was, and that was the inspiration and the spark for them to apply. At this point in our team's kind of development, it was kind of crazy to think that one presentation from a random 9th grader was the thing that was going to get a student engaged, because we have so many programs that we're doing robotics in the community already. But it really can make a difference. And from my perspective, it helps build out the diversity in the program, rather than it just being network effects, friends telling friends, and you're going to get kind of a demographic clumping if you limit yourself on your recruitment towards that. Leaning on your contacts and your teachers is something we've had a lot of success in, building up a network of junior high teachers that know about your program and know about the amazing things that you're doing at the high school level, and having them kind of feed some of their best kids to you and say, hey, this kid is really awesome. I know they're going to love robotics. They've never done it before, but you're going to love having them on the team. Some of our best kids actually, our founding teacher's wife was the French teacher at one of the junior highs. And so we got a lot of the best French students joining our team in like the 2010 era. And some of our best kids we've ever had in the program came out of the French pathway at the junior high. So like, you never know where these kids are going to come from, but having those relationships and that network and that community that you can pull from to build up your program is really valuable. All right, another thing about building your team is your leadership planning and your goal setting. Juliana talked a lot about that this morning at the keynote. Even if your team doesn't yet have a formal leadership structure, or maybe you have a couple of captains, but not really any other formal leaders, even if the leadership isn't formal right now, I think with maybe an hour of reflection, you and a couple of other key individuals, whether those are coaches, teachers, students, can identify who the 15 or so influence makers are within your program, right? Or maybe 15 is too aggressive, maybe 5. Find those people and get together and talk about what you want this next year to look like with your team. Around now is the perfect time. Citrus Circuits will have our leadership retreat here in a couple of weeks, and we're gonna do this exact process. Even though we've had a lot of the same goals year over year, things like win the world championship, things of that nature, but we always have new goals every year. Like one of the SMART goals from last year our student leads had was, we want to do quarterly one-on-ones with every student on the team. And you can imagine with a team of 115 kids, that can be challenging, but the SMART goal process, the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, we were able to set up a system for the students to track if the leads had their one-on-ones yet with each of the students on the team. And we actually had pretty good coverage. Actually, the kids did a way better job doing their one-on-ones than I was supposed to do with our coaches. So it's an area I'm going to try to improve next year. But the process of sitting down with your key influencers within your program and building alignment around what you want this next year to look like, and setting up a couple of key goals that maybe stretch you a little bit as a team to grow a little bit more, is a really valuable process. I gave a whole talk on goal setting. It's on our website. You can just Google Citrus Circuits goal setting, and I gave a whole talk on this maybe 5 years ago that I think is still pretty relevant and talks about this process a little bit more in depth. All right, this may seem trivial, but bonding as coaches and mentors within your program is super valuable. The alignment within your team and your student leadership is important from the perspective of all heading in the same direction. The alignment with your coaches and your mentors is important from that perspective, but also on the interpersonal side. I think a lot of us can relate to how awkward or painful issues can be within a coaching staff, where there's friction and people are not getting along or seeing eye to eye. Those things are inevitable, but I truly believe that they can they can be mitigated by building alignment in advance of when the high stress situations are going to evolve within your team. But they can also they can be easier to address when you've built up a rapport and a strong foundation of relationship and understanding before your really high stress seasons are starting. So this is a picture of a couple summers ago. One of our coaches has a whole brewing setup. So he took all of the coaches through brewing 101. So we did brewing one day, and then I don't know how to make beer, but you have to go back like 4 weeks later to do something else. And so it was like a multi-stage summer process. And it was a fun excuse to all get together, just grow in a relationship and develop those bonds to better serve the students come the season. Okay, a couple of highlights. The citrus highlight for this point is our green lime ceremony. We heard about the bucket hat ceremony. It's basically the same thing. I didn't even know the bucket hat ceremony was a thing. I was taking this from, who here is like a medical professional? Do we have any like doctors or nurses? Or maybe you know a doctor or nurse? Everyone knows like has someone in their family or a friend. Well, they have this thing where they have the white coat ceremony as a part of that education system. And for us, the green lime ceremony is very similar. It occurs during our new member orientation, which is the first week of school. It's when all the new students get to learn who what sub-team they're on. They get to meet their sub-team lead. They get to meet each other. The key part about the green lime ceremony is it's one tool that we use to develop a sense of belonging for the new students on the team. I remember the part of the inspiration was we would get to off seasons in September and October, and we'd invite new students on the team to go to the off season events, but they wouldn't have a shirt to go with. So they'd have to either borrow a shirt or buy an old team shirt to go to the competitions and support and represent the team. And it seemed to me like just an obvious gap that like these kids should have a shirt. They should feel like they're a part of Citrus because they now are a part of Citrus. And so this is meant to be a little bit awkward. We have all the kids stand up there and everyone cheers for them and they all hold up their shirts. But it's a fun opportunity for them to say like, yes, now I'm a part of Citrus. I got the big green lime. I'm a part of this program. I belong here. So that's a little highlight of our season. Every fall we do that. Task for tomorrow. Again, these things seem trivial, but they are very valuable exercises to go through. If you don't have it already, make your roster for next year. Your roster is not something to build in December once you figure out which kids stick. Build your roster now. Literally make the spreadsheet that's going to have all the kids, their contact info, their parents' contact info. Build your email lists. Build a system that's going to store that information. These systems and processes are going to enable you to better engage your students in the fall and then have a firm understanding of who all the students on your team are, how they fit in and slot them within your program. So if you haven't yet made your roster for the 2025-2026 season, build your roster tomorrow. It's an exercise that will pay dividends going forward. Something that we do on Citrus that makes building a roster easier is we do applications. But even if your team is not a team that does applications, which Citrus was not for a majority of our team's history, consider having a cutoff date where you are no longer accepting new students for the current season. And the roster exercise is going to help maybe bring up the fact of should we actually consider locking our roster for the season? And that answer is going to be different for each team. But even if you're not a team that does applications, consider if there's a moment where you might want to lock things down and run with your current roster for the season. Okay. Second main topic we're going to talk about is strategic outreach to further your team's mission. Okay, a couple of things that you can do that are strategic points of outreach. All right, youth robotics or pipeline development. There are so many different ways this could go. We could talk, there could be many presentations just about youth robotics and pipeline development. A couple of things around youth robotics engagement. If you're just getting started, it's actually a really low barrier to entry. On Citrus, one of the easiest ways that we engage with youth in robotics that's low effort, low overhead on our end is just finding local youth robotics teams that the students on your team can support. So if you are doing currently no youth outreach, a way you can start is finding one local FLL or VexIQ team that you can have 1 or 2 high school kids go and support maybe once or twice a month for 3 to 4 months in the fall to help make that team season a little bit better. That's like bare minimum, lowest bar. Find a local program and support them with some additional help and support. That can grow and grow and grow into, this is a picture of one of our VexIQ tournaments. We host 5 of these every fall. Probably a total of 200 something attending teams. We also coach 35 or less, no, maybe it's like 42 now, 42 local VexIQ teams in our town. So we have student mentors that mentor each of those teams. We also, I think on my Citrus highlight, I'll talk about RoboCamps. We also run programs at the junior high and elementary schools. Over 60% of kids on Citrus now that are coming into our team, I mentioned the 56-ish new students that are joining Citrus this fall. Over 30-something of them were a part of what we call Davis Youth Robotics, which is encompasses all of our different youth robotics STEM engagement programs within the community. For me, the pipeline is a way to ensure that we have a consistent crew of students coming into Citrus. That's why this is specifically strategic outreach, because for me, the goal with the pipeline, it's almost like a little league farm system or something like that. We want more kids engaged in robots so that we have a bigger pool of candidates coming into Citrus circuits. And our team is going to be stronger and more sustainable at the high school level, the stronger our youth development program is at the elementary and junior high school level. So now we have, I think, about 1 out of every 5 students in K through 8 in the entire town of Davis is building robots in one of our 3 main programs within the community. And that leads to a stronger high school program. And then, selfishly, from my perspective, it also leads to better employees and coaches 4 years after they graduate high school, right? So it all feeds together, and that's part of the joy, the beauty of the pipeline. Okay, demos and community engagement. Another actually fairly low effort thing. This is, my team in high school was not super organized when I was a student on the team, but this is one of the things that we could do. It was pretty natural to pick up our robot, put it in a parent's van, take it to a local community event or a sponsor event, and show off the robot. These events are actually really valuable at building these community connections. And when we talk later about fundraising and some of those tasks, those can get easier the more of these community engagement events that you go to. I feel like every year there's more and more that are popping up, and a lot of like FRC specific or FRC sponsor specific community engagement opportunities. So definitely take the opportunity to do it. From my perspective, it also helps build up our student leads and build up student presenters. They develop soft skills, talking with, planning out events, talking with community partners and just broad community members. So very valuable things to do in the off season. FRC network building. As a coach, you're in the right space right now to do FRC network building. I can actually draw a direct through line that the strength of the mentor community that I've personally built over the last 15 or 20 years of coaching has directly benefited the way that I can serve the students on Citrus circuits. And that's going to look different for every team and every mentor and coach. But your personal network is going to help support you in really an infinite number of ways, from the technical side, from the encouragement side, answering questions, supporting you when you need support, loaning you parts when you need parts. Like, these are the kind of tools that you can get from building up a really strong network of mentors. This is a picture from just 2 days ago. I came straight here from Mexico. I was at the first Mexico Mentor Conference with Prepatech. I don't know, did anyone see Paco win the Woody Flowers Award this year? Yeah. Paco is amazing, and he runs 31 Prepatech FRC teams and invited me and a couple other Citrus Circuits coaches to come down and visit those teams. But what Paco was demonstrating there is exactly what this conference is about and exactly what the strength of building a mentor network is all about. It's coaches and mentors helping each other out, answering each other's questions, building up relationships that can help sustain them when they're serving their students. So you're already checking the box on this one, so great job everyone for being here. Okay, let's talk about a specific highlight of work that we do in the off season. That is a lot of work, but it is a huge engine of our program, and that's our RoboCamp program. We started this in 2016. It was inspired off of 3132 in Australia. They had their RoboCamp program, and they spoke very highly of it. So we started running summer camps back in 2016. We now have about 450 campers. And RoboCamps for us, I call it a win-win-win-win. for our program, all right? So it builds youth interest. We already talked about that pipeline engagement side of things. RoboCamps it's reaching hundreds and hundreds of kids in Davis with robots, and it's gonna help build our pipeline for the future of Citrus. It also deepens the high school student commitment. So it gives the high school students another opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to Citrus Circuits by volunteering at one of our 8 weeks of RoboCamps. It's a fundraiser for our team. So our revenue this year on RoboCamps is going to be $132,000. About $30,000 of that goes towards facility expenses and stipends for the teachers, but we clear just over $100,000 from our RoboCamps each summer. And then the last thing I mentioned, the teacher stipends. This is for me as an engineer who doesn't teach. This is another strategic value of the RoboCamps, which is we can pay our teachers very generously to supervise our RoboCamps in the summer. And I'm sure at least a number of you are teachers or have worked in schools. It can often be a thankless job, both in the work that you do and the compensation that you receive. And so for us, the stipends of RoboCamps is one way that we can both kind of show gratitude to the teachers that give so much to our team and our robotics program, but also frankly retain teachers in a field where you can often see a lot of turnover, and losing one good teacher can sometimes be the end of a first robotics program. So for us, running RoboCamps in the way that we do and having these 4 wins is really helped strengthening our program for the competition this season. All right. And I mentioned this at the beginning of this section, but your task for tomorrow, if you are not already, identify a youth robotics program in your area that can use your support. It can be, like I said, just a couple of days over a month or 2 or 3 in the fall, which is usually like the main, VEX IQ and FLL season. You don't have to start your own team. On Citrus, we have I mentioned, I think we have about 42 VEX IQ teams in Davis that compete in VEX IQ competitions. Citrus Circuits runs none of those teams, all right? We offer student coaches to support, but the parents run the teams. It can be low effort on your end to find a youth team to support. Even if it's just 1 or 2 days a week or a month, it can be really valuable to start to build that pipeline and generate more interest in your community for robotics at a younger age. All right. Third main area in the off-season, training processes or turn the crank. I mentioned we have 120 kids. This is on Citrus. Our training processes are incredibly systematized because every year the pipeline's coming in and we got more kids to feed through the system. So FRC curriculum is the first component of our turn the crank training process. Every year students come in not knowing anything about how to build an FRC robot. And so it's your responsibility as a team to, after you've onboarded them, to then start to invest in them. And the nice thing is they're learning this almost the same things every single year. So the repetition is an advantage that you have as an FRC team. You can teach the same curriculum every year to a new batch of kids every year. Building these curriculums is a lot of work. You don't need your curriculum to cover everything about how to do FRC. My opinion and the way that Citrus runs things is it covers the basics and it gets the kids moving and grooving, but all of the advanced stuff is more looser. It's not formally set up into a curriculum, but it is important to have something structured for the basics. It's going to help enable that taking a kid from 0 to where you want them to be. I mentioned we have this whole youth robotics pipeline within Citrus where we have 1,000+ students in Davis building robots in some capacity pre-high school. We do not, frankly, care what their robotics experience is when they come into Citrus Circuits, because what they've learned is not what they're going to need to be successful in our program. What we care about is the students are excited and passionate about what they're about to do on Citrus. They don't need to have any experience. And so our training curriculum does genuinely start from 0 across the board. So keep that in mind and think about how you might be able to incorporate more formal training, at least into the first couple months of your school year. Student ownership, building up student ownership as a part of this. Juliana talks so much about this in a more refined and elegant way, which I really enjoyed listening to. The students are the engine to train each other. We are peer-to-peer believers, 100%. Our founding teacher, Steve Harvey, he believed to his core that the future of education was peer-to-peer learning, project-based learning, and we really buy into that when it comes to our training in the off season. And to that point, it does allow for some amount of I guess, evolution and changes year over year because our student leads are the ones responsible for running and organizing the training. I encourage them to change things and to mix things up year over year. The thing that I think maybe I even talk about this later, but I asked two things of each of our student leads. I asked that they put in a world championship level of quality of work towards what we're building on the robot side. And I asked that they train the new students better than they were trained when they were new to the team. Those are the two key elements of being a lead on Citrus. And so every year the trainings are going to evolve and look different. And I actually really like that. And it actually, I think, is an advantage that our program has because the students are only here for 3 to 4 years. And they don't know what FRC looked like a decade ago. But they don't need to know what FRC looked like a decade ago because for the most part, the lessons we were teaching 10 years ago are not relevant anymore, or at least they are highly evolved because the platform's different, the tools are different, the code is different. There's a lot of things that are different now than there were 10 years ago. And I think by having student leads take the ownership over the training curriculum, they're more likely to keep your curriculum fresh and up to date because they're going to look at what they did last year or 2 years ago and they'll be like, this slide, it does not even matter anymore. We don't do this. Or there's there's an API for that. I'm not even going to bother teaching the kids how to do this anymore. So the kids are actually pretty good about evaluating their training curriculum, figuring out what's still relevant, what needs to be added, changed, or improved to keep our team evolving and growing in the right direction. All right. A key part of training is measuring your outcomes. Having either explicit tracking sheets, which you're tracking the completion of students, either projects or tasks or homeworks that they need to get done to learn their skills. Some sub-teams on Citrus are better than others at tracking things. In lieu of detailed tracking, another thing that I've really tried to incorporate into our program is certificating kids for certain accomplishments. Like there's a Haas training certificate that you can get, like a Haas operator training. That's a big deal for our kids and they get really excited. And this is a picture of a technician that we hired to come in and do some training with our kids. And then we later did a certificate for using the Haas machine that a couple of our kids have gotten. I got the Haas training certificate too. I was pretty proud to get my Haas certificate. So having ways to recognize and track the training accomplishments is a part of our training flow. Okay. A little Citrus highlight. I mentioned the machine trainings. I just want to go a little more in depth on our machine training process because this is something we've had in place now for over a decade and it's served us very well in getting kids up to speed. We have levels 1, 2, and 3 for all the main machine categories, your mills, your lathes, your CNC routers. And then the students are expected to do 3-hour trainings to get through each of those levels. So it's a lot of training overall. It's 27 hours just to get to level 3 on the 3 basic machines in the shop. And that's on top of, you have to go through router level 4 and 5 before you can start touching the $100,000 Haas machine, right? So there's these different levels and then there's a crosswise matrix that we have in a spreadsheet that's all of the students in the hardware sub-team that are gonna get trained on the machines, all the levels for all the machines. And you can imagine, you have maybe 80 students on hardware times 18 or 20 different possible training levels. That is thousands and thousands of cumulative training hours that need to go in to get all the students to where we want them to be. And that's why that tracking element is really important because you'll identify within your program where are the weaknesses. Oh my gosh, we only have 2 kids that are level 3 on the router going into build season. This is a 5-alarm fire. We need to schedule extra trainings in December to make sure that we're ready when we get to build season, that we can actually have kids that are gonna make the parts for us. So machine training is something we've put a lot of time into formalizing and tracking. it's also from like a health and safety perspective, having a clear list of who is and is not trained on these high energy, can be very dangerous machines is an important part of our program. Okay, so task for tomorrow, something that your team can and probably should do right away is, if you don't currently have any formal curriculum within your program, find one formal piece of curriculum that you can incorporate into your team structure. I'm going to give a plug on frcdesign.org that trains students up on OnShape. It's absolutely incredible. One of the, David, I think, from Sushi Squad is one of the leaders in that program. He reached out to me when it was just kind of being drafted up, and I gave him some feedback, but like the amount of work that they put into this website is truly incredible, and it is a real game changer for teams across the world to give their students real, like, you know, engaging trainings that are going to make a big difference in their program come build season. So highly recommend looking at frcdesign.org. But regardless of what you select, have something formal and structured that can teach the basics of one or more areas of your team this fall, so you're especially your newer kids are better prepared for next season. All right, we're doing great. All right. Next thing that you can spend the off season doing to prepare for the season is deepening as a team in your technical depth and your capacity as a program. So building robots outside your comfort zone, finding new techniques. For Citrus, this looks like clone robots. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But the big thing here is the game of FIRST robotics is always changing. The robots are evolving every year. The off-the-shelf components are different every year. There's new things that are always being incorporated into the program. And so because the game's always evolving, it's important to be learning and trying new things year over year. So some examples of things that you could learn, maybe your team has never built one of these two-stage elevators that goes from the ground to 10 feet from, in the air super fast. Like, these are techniques that a lot of teams have gotten very good at over the last couple years with the last few games. But if your team doesn't have that skill set right now, try building one in the off season. It doesn't even need to be a part of a broader robot. It can just be that standalone mechanism or project. But if it's something that's new and a little bit deeper, and specifically something that your veteran students can really sink their teeth into in the fall to deepen their understanding of their particular area of the team, those are valuable projects to invest some time and frankly invest a little bit of money into, because it's going to pay dividends when it comes to the season. Even if it doesn't get used specifically, that project, at least the skills and experience your students have built up doing those projects is going to pay off no matter what they're building come January. Okay. Julian also mentioned the prototyping challenges. This is something that Citrus has been doing for many, many years. This is, I think, from the 2017 off season, because we all had a million of these, right? I think some people have a million more in their warehouses. But the prototyping and iteration practice, the build season is really quick, and it is hard to prototype well. I'll just be honest with you. It is a difficult challenge. And I think a lot of these teams that do it really well, they have smart kids, but they also have coaches that have been doing this for many, many years that know the ins and outs of prototyping effectively to get the answers that you need. But it's a very hands-on, tactile challenge of finding that piece of hex shaft and those wheels that were in that bin that we haven't touched in 5 years, and those two pieces of plywood, and slapping it all together and then spinning it with a drill, right? Like, these are things that a lot of us have done year over year. It's stuff that, one of the stages of the robotics development cycle that I really enjoy. But without some specific structure around prototype training, and learning those specific, like, deep skills around how to prototype effectively, students generally won't come into the build season prepared. And I know as a coach, you can be really frustrated when kids, don't know how to, slap two pieces of plywood together and spin a shaft to test an intake, right? Like, these are skills that take the hands-on learning. And so Juliana mentioned it, but we set up games that the kids are going to play with a couple of days of work on their prototype. They have to sketch out their prototype and have their design explain their design to a coach before they're allowed to start cutting any wood, so that they get the experience of like sketching things out by hand and communicating in that medium. But the key thing here is it's always a lot of fun at the end, because usually most of the prototypes don't work very well, but you can keep it really fun and lighthearted and engaging, and this has been one of the funnest things that we do on Citrus every off season. Okay, the Citrus highlight is our Citrus Champs program event that we run each fall. So Citrus builds 3 clone robots every off season. We have 2 that are in fabrication right now, and the third more basic robot is currently still being designed. But when you combine those 3 clone robots with our alpha robot and our practice and competition robot, we end up having 6 robots that can play the current season game. And so what we do on Citrus is we host an internal round robin 3v3 competition structure at our facility in Davis. And we do this the weekend before Madtown, and it's kind of like a play-in event for Madtown Throwdown. So the top 3 robots out of the Citrus Champs get to go to Madtown the following weekend. So it's a really fun time where a lot of additional kids get to try to drive robots and be a part of the pit team and maintain a robot through a competition event. It's a one day, but it is a pretty grueling day because there's no breaks between matches. You're back to back to back to back the entire day. For us as a team, it helps us pressure test the technical sub teams and the students on those teams. It provides real deadlines for projects in the fall, and then it gives more students opportunities, like we talked about, to compete in an FRC type setting. Task for tomorrow is not to run Citrus Champs, but the task for tomorrow is pick a robot that competed maybe last year or the year before and copy something on that robot. Doesn't have to be a whole robot, but I think every team here has the capability, even if it's with scraps that you have in your shop, find a robot to inspire you and practice going through the process of design, fabrication, assembly, programming on that specific subsystem, and give those students on your team a little bit more technical depth through that exercise. All right. 5th main thing to do in the off season: prepare for your build season. Set your build season schedule and your expectations. November, December, so in 3 months from now is a great time to start to sit down with pencil and paper and maybe a Google Doc and start to talk about what you want the next build season to look like. Map it out with that same group of main influencers and leaders within the program. Input the event schedule, because hopefully by November, December, you have most of your event registrations sorted out, so you know when you're going to be competing, and you can kind of work backwards and say, all right, here's kickoff, here's our first event, here's district championship, here's how we want this season to go. Let's set up milestones and deadlines, and it doesn't have to be as crazy as this 100-row Gantt chart that Citrus runs every year, but writing up some bullet points of what you want the season to look like and getting alignment with that core leadership group about what you're going to hold yourself to is a valuable part of that experience. And then secondly, and just as important, take that schedule then and present that schedule to the rest of your team to build awareness of what you're about to jump into. Here's what the season should look like. Here are some of the major milestones that we've set out for ourselves. We want the robot mechanically together by this day, and we want to have run 10 matches of driver practice by this day, right? And we want the robot to survive a single match without breaking by this day, right? So you can set up these milestones as a team, and for every team it's going to look different, but the key thing is the process here. The key thing is having that dedicated time to talk about what you want the schedule to be. Okay, shop organization. Juliana also mentioned this, but man, I could spend years just dreaming of how I'd want to organize shops, right? And so the key thing here is it's important to be effective in season. You have to know where all your stuff is. And more importantly than that, to be effective as a engineer development program, you need to make it easy for your kids to know where things are. And so I try to make our shop more like engineering for kindergartners, meaning everything is bright colors and everything's numbered and lettered, and when you pull a bin out, you know where that bin goes back, right? It's just like the kids have their cubbies in kindergarten, right? Like we try to make things as simple to follow as possible, because it's going to help enable kids to engage and contribute at a really high level, as long as our shop is organized and everything is put together well. This is a shop rack I'm just proud of because I helped weld it up and we installed it last summer in our shop. Okay, fundraising. Not going to go into the details of fundraising. I'm just going to say that it's kind of like in personal finance, having an emergency fund is just going to like help, take your blood pressure down a couple of notches. On your FRC team, having a slush fund, I'm going to say a year of extra funds in the bank to sustain your team through the highs and lows of fundraising helps alleviate any stress from that element of the program. So putting a lot of focused effort into fundraising is something you can do now to enable a better competition season. And I will just say that the other thing that you can do as your fundraising strengthens and grows is you can start to spend money on things without worrying about how, about the timeline, and that we can pay for this in advance, things like that, because it's going to help alleviate your stress and help enable you to build better robots by having more money. So encourage you to fundraise, put the effort into it. Having the slush fund in particular, though, for us, like we had a really down year fundraising 2 years ago, and we had to dip into that reserve that I talked about just to sustain the team through that period. That was really important for us. And so things like that can, I think, just help all of us as coaches sleep a little better at night, knowing the team has a little bit of a reserve. Okay. The highlight for Citrus on this is our preseason purchasing system. Again, I love systems. I love spreadsheets. This is one of 5 different preseason inventory spreadsheets. This one's for our aluminum stock. We only inventory everything in our shop once a year, and it happens in November, early December. And I have the kids go through all these spreadsheets and count how much we have of each of the line items on the spreadsheet. And then the spreadsheet automatically compares that with how many we're supposed to have before we go into season. And then I spend, a nice relaxing evening at home buying things from about 30 different websites. And then over the course of December, about $15,000 of inventory comes into our shop, and then we sort it out into all the bins, and then we're ready for the season. And what this does for us is it alleviates the stress of, hey, we ran out of this size bolt when we get into, we're in the thick of building our robot. You don't want to run out of something that you can avoid before the season starts. So this obviously does not solve everything around ordering during the season, but having a list of target inventory amounts before you get to kickoff can be valuable in helping accelerate your season and also reduce stress around timelines and ordering and things like that. All right, what's your task for tomorrow? Set goals for your team around the 2026 season and set a timeline. It does not have to be super elaborate, but developing a common understanding of the key milestones that you all are going to hold each other to when it comes to the 2026 build season is a really valuable tool to a successful season. So I think set aside at least 4 hours. Commit to 4 hours of 2026 vision boarding around what you want the season to look like. All right, 2 quick final thoughts. 1, avoid mentor burnout. This is way easier said than done, but I want to just highlight a few tools or tips or techniques and some things to think about. 1, if you don't already take some time off during the summer, please do. On Citrus, we kind of run things in shifts a little bit, and I intentionally unplug in June and July from most of what we do on the team. But give yourself that grace to take time off. For a lot of us, we may be one of 2 or one of 4 key adults that help our teams run. And that is that is something to be commended. But I think it's also important to have a lot of grace for yourself that just by being in this room and doing the work that you're doing in your community, you're giving back, more than most will in their whole life. And it's something to be proud of, but it's also something to recognize that it's important to also focus time on yourself in the off season and spend that time away from the team. I've told Dave this a lot, but I'm trying to coach for the next 40 years, not the next 4 years. These kids only have 4 years in the program, but I hope to be around for a very long time. And so pacing yourself appropriately is important. So this is a picture of my wife and I going on one of our many gravel rides around Davis, but this is just one of the things we like to do to unplug and spend some time together. All right, and then the last thing, I mentioned a lot of plans and options and things you can do, but I think probably one of the most valuable things, and this is going to look very different for each team, is finding a spark within your program. Finding something that you can engage with your students in the fall that they're genuinely excited about. And this could look like running a youth robotics event. This could look like building a clone robot or a robot project. It could look like a million different things, but find something that a portion of your team really latches onto and gets excited about. Ideally, that isn't just 2026 competition season focus, like something that is set aside that they can use to build skills, get excited about. So it could be optional projects, things like that, but just something that they're gonna get really stoked on and wanna show up, and they'll be bugging you to open up the shop for extra hours because they're just that excited about whatever project they're working on. So every team's gonna be different on what this spark looks like, but spend some time trying to find out what that spark might be. Okay, with that, I think we probably have time for just a couple of questions before we wrap up. So, any questions? Are we doing microphones again? All right, perfect. Microphone right behind you. And then over there in the middle.
Yeah, I just want to say that's truly impressive what you guys have put together. Couple questions. One is your annual budget, and the other is, okay, now it's January 2026. The day of the reveal, all of a sudden you get what the next competition is going to look like, what the challenge is. How does the architecture go down? How do you basically who does it, and how does that process work?
Yeah. So
because at least I believe, this, my 2 cents is that once you set the architecture, everything pretty much is in motion on such a short time frame. I've only done this 1 year, so bear with me, but that's kind of what I think. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so our budget's a little bit inflated because we have to pay for all of our student travel. A lot of teams don't have to. So a lot of our income is parent donations that are effectively offsetting travel. But our annual budget's around $250,000 a year. And on the point of kickoff architecture, we have a very formal kickoff weekend answering we're reading the rule book, answering what are we going to do, and then answering how are we going to do it, and that helps set up our architecture. But most of the architecture is set up by the design sub team in the first week or so of build season. So they're the ones that are crafting what the robot shape is going to look like, and are we going to be able to reach this thing or do this thing? A lot of that's set in the first week or so. Yeah, I think there was one hand raised here. Yeah.
Thank you. One question I have is, what are some of the benefits you've seen of growing your student headcount? I'm a mentor on a team with like 45 students, and we want to grow a lot, and we can, but what are some of the things that you've noticed as a benefit of that? Yeah,
I think for me, altruistically, I want to be able to serve the most amount of teams that we can healthily support. So we found that coming in with 110, 120 is about what our limit is as a program. That's why we do applications. But I will say I'm also a very competitive person, and from a competitive perspective, having a large pool of students, it's more of a numbers game, where out of 120 kids on the team, even though they're all expected to be there 80% of meetings and they all fulfill those goals and they're all, relatively excited and passionate kids, you only get maybe 40% of those kids that are really going to be putting in the extra effort, the nights and weekends sort of kids to build up. And so from my perspective, having a larger pool means that the pool of kids that are in that 30-40% of students is larger as well. And so we just get higher output higher output overall because we have a larger pool of students to pick from in the first place. And then, it's all about the pipeline development. So that's why we also do all the youth engagement, because I want a bigger pool of kids applying to the team, so we even have better kids. And so that number of kids that are highly engaged on our team goes up as well, because they're more passionate about robotics because they've been doing it since they were in kindergarten, right? So it's it all feeds in together, but the overall goal is to have more and more excellent student contributors to the program, and that's what having a larger headcount for our team, that's what having a larger headcount does. But you can totally overdo it. When we were just about to start doing applications, our team would be 30 kids at the end of the previous season, and we had no application process, and 130 kids would show up for the first meeting, and I didn't know who 80 of them were, so the application process has helped us kind of throttle back to a sustainable level while still growing and being able to get a lot done. Maybe we have time for one more, or how many do we? What can we do? One more? Great.
Hey, you mentioned in your presentation the topic of fundraising, and considering the travel cost in the hotel for 120 kids, as well as being able to afford to build multiple robots in a single season to the point of being able to host like a 3 versus 3 robots matches and stuff. I can't even imagine the total like cost of it all. So my question is, how? How are you able to what is your secret of being able to afford all of this? And kind of another question tied to it is, do you have any students that are involved in terms of the fundraising? So like a treasurer position or like a fundraising committee or anything of that kind?
Yeah, we have, we call our business and media sub-team. I think they'll have maybe 15 or 16 students on it this fall. And yeah, they're responsible for a lot of that fundraising. But a lot of it also comes down to the engine we built with things like the RoboCamps. RoboCamps are going to continue to be a 6-figure funding source for our team, basically infinitely, right? I mean, it's like the system is in place. There's almost nothing that I need to do anymore to keep that system running at the level we have it at right now. But then, some of it is just the hard work of finding corporate sponsors, and that's what our students on the business and media team are doing. So they're doing all those cold calls and outreach and things like that to try to make that work. And then, the last big source of funding, like I said, is the parent donations, because they're essentially offsetting a lot of the travel costs. Yeah. Great. Well, I think that is the time we have. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention and great questions. And if you have any other questions we didn't get to, please find me afterwards. I'm here to talk to everyone and anyone, so I'd love to meet you, introduce me, and it'd be great to chat. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks everybody. We have a 10-minute break, and then we'll return here at 11:40.